There comes a moment in life when the world grows quiet. The conversations fade, the faces you once depended on drift into the distance. And what remains is only the sound of your own breathing. At first, this quiet feels like a void, an emptiness you don't know how to fill. You reach for your phone. You scroll. You try to reconnect with someone, anyone. But beneath every distraction, there's still that quiet hum. A presence you can't ignore. It's easy to believe that loneliness is a kind of punishment. That being alone means something has gone wrong. But what if this stillness is not emptiness at all? What if it is an invitation? Loneliness is not a wall. It's a doorway. It opens when the noise fades, when the crowd disappears. And when you are left with no one but yourself. It is the beginning of a conversation you've been avoiding. For so long we've run from ourselves, filling every silence with distraction, chasing every form of comfort outside of us. But the truth is, solitude is not the absence of connection. It is the rediscovery of it. The world has taught us to depend on constant noise, on validation, on belonging, on being seen. But when the world turns away, you're offered something infinitely more powerful. The chance to see yourself clearly. This is the hidden gift of solitude. It strips away the performances, the masks, the endless reaching. It leaves you with something simple, something honest. It leaves you with yourself. In that space, you begin to notice small things. The rhythm of your own thoughts. The emotions that rise and fall like waves. The subtle ways your heart speaks without words. And somewhere within that stillness, you start to sense a different kind of presence. Not from outside, but from within. A quiet voice that whispers, "I have been here all along. You were never truly alone." Loneliness is one of the most misunderstood emotions. We treat it as an enemy, something to escape, something to numb, something to hide. But what if loneliness is not the absence of love, but the longing to reconnect with a deeper part of ourselves that we've neglected? When you feel lonely, it isn't always because others have abandoned you. Often, it's because you've drifted away from your own center. You've been running, through routines, conversations, goals, and endless noise. Until one day, silence catches up with you. And you realize you no longer know the sound of your own voice. Loneliness, in its truest form, is a mirror. It reflects the parts of you that are asking to be seen again. It shows you where you've been outsourcing your worth. To people's attention, to work, to approval, to noise. And when those things fade, the emptiness you feel is simply the echo of all the places you left yourself behind. To sit with loneliness is to sit with truth. It asks you to stop searching outward and turn inward. To face the quiet question that so many avoid. Who am I when no one is watching? Who am I when no one needs me? Who am I when the world falls silent? Most people run from these questions because they strip away identity. They dissolve the masks we wear to feel safe. But if you stay, if you breathe through the ache, something begins to shift. The sharpness of loneliness softens. The silence starts to sound less like absence and more like peace. And slowly, you begin to feel yourself returning home. You start noticing how much energy you spent trying to be enough for others. How much of your joy depended on whether someone noticed you. How often you bent yourself to fit into spaces that never truly saw you. Loneliness reveals these things not to wound you, but to free you from them. Because the truth is, you cannot be abandoned by the world if you have not abandoned yourself. When you learn to meet your own presence with gentleness, you discover that solitude is not punishment, it's protection. It shields you from the chaos long enough for you to hear your own heartbeat again. The mirror of loneliness can be painful, because it reflects everything we've avoided. The grief we never named, the desires we silenced, the dreams we postponed until someone understands. But when you look honestly, when you stop turning away, you realize loneliness was never here to destroy you. It was here to remind you that you are whole. Even when no one else is standing beside you, you begin to understand that being alone is not the same as being empty. It's the beginning of becoming full. Full of your own awareness, your own peace, your own quiet strength. There is a certain beauty that only solitude can reveal. A stillness that becomes your teacher. A silence that holds more truth than 1,000 conversations. It is in that silence that you meet the person you've been searching for all along, yourself. There is a moment, often unnoticed, when loneliness begins to transform. It doesn't happen suddenly. It begins quietly, like a soft shift in light. What once felt like emptiness starts to feel spacious. What once felt like silence begins to sound like calm. This is the hidden turning point. When solitude stops being something that happens to you and becomes something that happens for you. Solitude heals in ways company never can. Because when you are alone, you are finally without performance. There is no role to play, no version of yourself to uphold. No need to be likable, impressive, or understood. You can exhale, fully. The mask slips, the tension dissolves. And what remains is something pure and unfiltered. Most people fear solitude because it feels like loss. They believe that healing comes from being held. From being seen, from being understood. And yes, connection heals. But only after you've learned to connect with yourself first. If you skip that step, you'll keep searching for someone else to do the inner work for you. Solitude forces you to confront the truth that you are your own home. It teaches you how to comfort yourself without needing a savior. It shows you that validation, peace, and grounding cannot be permanently borrowed from others. They must be built within. At first, being alone can feel unbearable. You'll want to reach for distractions, to escape the stillness that exposes your pain. But if you can resist the urge to run, you'll find that the quiet begins to hold you. It starts to wrap around your heart like a warm blanket. Not because it removes your pain, but because it allows your pain to finally breathe. Healing through solitude isn't about pushing the ache away. It's about listening to it. Asking what it's trying to tell you. Every emotion has a message. Grief asks for release. Anger asks for truth. Loneliness asks for presence. When you meet these emotions without judgment, they begin to soften. You begin to soften. It's in solitude that you discover your capacity to self-soothe. You start doing small, quiet things. Making tea, writing in silence, sitting near a window as the light changes. And in those small rituals, you remember what safety feels like. Not the safety given by others, but the kind you create within yourself. There is something sacred about being able to sit alone. Not out of resignation, but out of reverence. It is the moment when your own company stops feeling like a punishment and begins to feel like a prayer. You start to notice that your thoughts grow clearer. Your emotions move more gently. The constant need for reassurance begins to fade. And in its place, a quiet self-respect begins to grow. Solitude heals not because it fills you with answers, but because it gives you space to finally listen. The world's noise is relentless, always telling you who to be, how to feel, what to want. But solitude whispers a different message. You already are everything you've been seeking. The longer you stay in that quiet space, the more you begin to trust it. You realize that healing isn't a destination. It's a practice. A slow, imperfect returning to yourself. Again and again. Until your own presence feels like enough. And perhaps the most beautiful thing about solitude is that it does not demand anything from you. It simply invites you to be. Without proving, without pleasing, without pretending. In that gentle stillness, you begin to feel whole again. Not because anyone arrived to complete you, but because you finally remembered that you were never incomplete to begin with. There is a thin, almost invisible line between loneliness and peace. At first, they feel the same: the silence, the emptiness, the absence of another heartbeat beside your own. But if you stay long enough, if you breathe through the ache instead of fleeing from it, you'll begin to sense that they are not the same at all. Loneliness is a hunger, a reaching outward. It is the mind's way of saying, "Someone please fill this space within me." It is the echo of love unreturned, of words left unsaid. of a soul that has not yet learned how to sit beside its own shadow. Peace, on the other hand, is fullness. It is not the absence of people, it is the presence of self. It is the feeling of no longer needing to be understood, no longer fearing your own company. It is when the silence that once frightened you becomes the same silence that comforts you. To reach that peace, one must first walk through loneliness. Not around it, not over it, but through it. You must let the discomfort dissolve you a little. Let it take away the false layers, the identities built around being loved, admired, needed. Let it strip you bare until all that remains is the quiet truth that you are whole, even when unseen. Loneliness feels like standing at the edge of a vast ocean at night. The waves loud, the stars distant, and the darkness endless. But peace feels like floating in that same ocean, trusting the water to hold you. The surroundings are the same, but you have changed. It takes courage to stop fighting solitude, to stop filling it with noise, messages, scrolling, distractions. At first, it feels unnatural. You'll want to fill the space with something familiar. But over time, the mind grows still, and you begin to see how sacred that space truly is. In peace, time slows down. You start to notice the world again. The flicker of candlelight on the wall, the way your breath warms the cool air, the rhythm of your heartbeat in the quiet room. And you realize that nothing was ever missing. You were just too loud inside to hear the presence that was always there. Loneliness asks, "Who will stand beside me?" Peace answers, "I am here." Loneliness reaches outward, peace turns inward. Loneliness is restless, peace is rooted. Loneliness cries for rescue, peace whispers of return. When you stop resisting your solitude, you begin to recognize that it was never your enemy. It was your teacher, showing you how to sit within yourself without needing to escape. It was preparing you for the kind of love that doesn't come from another person, the kind that grows quietly inside you and stays. There will still be moments when you ache for connection, because we are human, and connection is sacred. But it will no longer come from a place of desperation. It will come from fullness, from wanting to share your peace, not fill your emptiness. That is the great transformation. When solitude no longer feels like punishment, but like sanctuary. When silence stops echoing with absence, and begins to hum with presence. When you realize that you were never truly alone, because your soul was always sitting beside you, waiting for you to notice. And in that noticing, in that gentle recognition that your own company is enough, loneliness quietly dissolves. What remains is stillness, awareness, and a deep, quiet peace that no one can give or take away. There comes a moment, quiet, almost unnoticeable, when the longing that once pulled at your chest begins to soften. The nights that used to feel heavy now feel gentle. The solitude that once burned like emptiness now feels like space, open, alive, sacred. This is the beginning of becoming whole again. Not through grand transformation, but through the slow remembering of who you've always been beneath the noise. We spend so much of our lives fragmented, scattered across other people's expectations, caught in old wounds, divided between who we show the world and who we truly are. And yet, healing is not about becoming someone new. It is about gathering the lost pieces of ourselves, calling them home, and sitting with them until they fit together again. Wholeness is not perfection. It is integration. It is the meeting of contradictions. Your light and your shadow. Your tenderness and your strength. Your fear and your courage. And realizing that they are not enemies, but partners in your becoming. You begin to forgive the parts of yourself you once tried to hide. The anger, the envy, the vulnerability, the desperate need to be seen. You start to see them not as flaws, but as fragments of an unfinished story. You stop asking, "Why am I like this?" and begin whispering, "It's okay. I understand now." Healing is not linear. It spirals. You'll revisit old wounds, old memories, but each time with more understanding, more softness. You'll see that pain does not disappear, it transforms. What once felt unbearable becomes a kind of quiet wisdom. What once defined you becomes simply a chapter. To become whole again is to stop running. To stop chasing people who can't stay. To stop fixing what was never yours to mend. It is to sit still long enough to hear your soul say, "I'm tired of pretending. Let's just be honest now." And in that honesty a new strength emerges. Not loud, not dramatic, but steady, grounded, real. You start to walk differently. You move with quiet assurance. Not because you have all the answers, but because you've learned how to live without needing them. You realize that peace isn't the absence of storms. It's learning to find stillness within them. You will still feel sadness. You will still have days when the world feels distant. But you'll stop fearing those moments. You'll know they are not regressions, but reminders. That you are human. And that wholeness includes both the breaking and the mending. And one day, without effort, you'll find yourself smiling in the quiet. Not because life has become easier, but because you have learned to meet it differently. You have stopped demanding that it always feel good, and started trusting that even the pain has its purpose. Becoming whole again is not about erasing the past. It is about honoring it. It is saying, yes, that happened. Yes, it hurt. But I am still here, and I am still growing. In that simple truth lies everything. The return to self. The homecoming to the soul. The understanding that the love you've been searching for was never meant to arrive from elsewhere. It was always meant to awaken from within. And when you reach that place, that soft equilibrium of acceptance and aliveness, you begin to move through the world differently. You no longer seek completion in others. You no longer beg for validation. You stand quietly and fully, as someone who has met themselves completely, and lived to tell the story. You are not perfect. You are whole. You are not broken. You are becoming. That is the essence of healing. To meet every part of yourself with compassion, until even your pain feels like a friend. There comes a time in every journey when words no longer reach what you're feeling. When explanations feel small. When you realize that not every truth can be spoken, some can only be felt. This is the landscape of stillness. Stillness is not merely the absence of movement, it's the presence of awareness. It's when you no longer need to fill every silence with distraction. When you stop measuring your worth by how much you produce. When the constant urge to fix, to chase, to achieve, begins to fade. It is not a place of escape. It's a place of return. Return to breath. Return to being. Return to the quiet pulse of life that's been beneath everything all along. For most of our lives, we're taught to run. To run toward goals, toward success, toward recognition. But few are taught how to be still. And yet, every spiritual tradition, every psychological truth, points back to the same realization. It's in stillness that you finally meet yourself. Stillness is uncomfortable at first. When you stop, you begin to hear all the noise you've been avoiding. The unfinished thoughts, the buried feelings, the restless anxiety of being alive. But if you stay, if you breathe through it, you start to see that beneath the surface chaos, there's a deeper rhythm guiding you, one that doesn't demand control. Only surrender. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Stillness is how you begin that conversation with the unconscious. It's not about forcing clarity. It's about allowing it, about letting insight rise from silence. Like light slowly returning after a long night. In the stillness, you'll start to notice small things again. The way sunlight lands across your hands. The sound of your own breathing. The faint hum of life around you. You begin to feel connected, not to anyone specific, but to the fabric of existence itself. And that connection quiets the hunger you once mistook for loneliness. Stillness teaches you to listen differently. Not to respond. Not to react. But to understand. You begin to realize that most answers are already within you. They've just been buried beneath the noise of the mind. There's a kind of strength that grows in stillness. Not the strength of endurance or ambition, but the strength of presence. The ability to remain centered even when everything around you moves. The quiet knowing that life doesn't need to be forced to unfold. When you start to live from stillness, you stop chasing meaning, and instead, you begin to notice it everywhere. In a simple morning routine. In the sound of rain. In the way your emotions rise and fall like tides. You start to realize that peace was never hiding. You were simply moving too fast to see it. This stillness does not make you indifferent. It doesn't mean you no longer care. It means you care more deeply, but with detachment. You act when needed, but you don't cling to outcomes. You love without control. You give without depletion. You rest without guilt. In stillness, you rediscover the sacred rhythm of life. Inhale, exhale. Expand, contract. Grow, release. You stop fearing endings because you see they are only transitions. You stop fearing change because you recognize it as nature's constant pulse. And slowly, you begin to embody something rare. A quiet confidence that needs no validation. A peace that cannot be stolen by circumstance. You start to feel at home in the pauses. At home in the uncertainty. At home in yourself. The gift of stillness is not that it changes your life. It changes the way you live it. It allows you to move through chaos without becoming chaotic. To feel deeply without drowning. To act decisively without aggression. You begin to realize that the greatest power is not control. It's presence. The ability to stay with what is. The ability to trust what's unfolding, even when you don't understand it yet. Stillness doesn't give you all the answers. It gives you the space where answers can finally reach you. It's where clarity is born. Where your intuition starts speaking louder than your fear. Where your heart learns to guide what your mind cannot yet comprehend. And once you've touched that stillness, you can never truly lose it. Even in the busiest noise of life, you'll know how to return. You'll know how to breathe again. And remember, everything you seek already exists in the quiet center of your being. There is a moment in every soul's journey when you realize that holding on hurts more than the loss itself. You spend so long trying to make sense of why things had to end. Why people leave, why plans fall apart, why dreams dissolve before they can bloom. You replay moments, conversations, and choices in your mind. As if you could edit the past by remembering it differently. But eventually, you reach a quiet understanding. That the weight you carry is no longer memory. It's resistance. Letting go is not a single act. It's a process of softening. It begins when you stop asking life to be other than what it is. It deepens when you stop fighting the truth that something is over. And it becomes liberation when you learn that endings are not punishments, but doorways, gentle, painful, necessary openings to the next stage of your becoming. We're taught to hold on. To people, to emotions, to identities, to control. But holding on too tightly is like clenching your fist around water. The harder you try to keep it, the faster it slips through your fingers. Letting go does not mean forgetting. It does not mean you never cared. It means you've decided to stop carrying what no longer grows within you. It means you're no longer feeding pain with your attention. It means you've accepted that some chapters are not meant to be rewritten. They're meant to be closed, gently, with gratitude. Carl Jung once said, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." And that is what letting go truly is. A choice to become something beyond your suffering. A choice to no longer define yourself by what was taken, but by what remains, and what still can be built from it. So much of our attachment isn't to people or situations. It's to the story we created around them. We hold on because we fear what will be without that story. Who are you if you're no longer chasing that dream? Who are you if that person no longer needs you? Who are you if the future you imagined is gone? At first, the answers feel terrifyingly empty. But if you stay in that space long enough, emptiness begins to feel like possibility. The absence of what was makes room for what could be. Letting go is an act of trust. Not in people, not in luck, but in life itself. It's the quiet faith that even what breaks you is shaping you into someone more whole. That even loss, when met with awareness, can be a teacher disguised as grief. There's a profound humility in surrendering to what is. It doesn't mean you give up. It means you finally stop fighting the current. You allow yourself to be carried by the river, instead of trying to swim against it. You begin to see that every detour, every closed door, every heartbreak was guiding you toward yourself. Letting go is also forgiving. Not because others always deserve forgiveness, but because you deserve peace. Holding anger is like drinking poison and expecting it to hurt someone else. Forgiveness is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's how you reclaim the energy that pain once consumed. There is a quiet strength that grows in those who have learned to release. You see it in their eyes. A softness that comes from no longer needing to prove, no longer needing to control. They've made peace with impermanence. They understand that nothing real is ever lost. It only changes form. When you let go, you return to the present moment. You stop living in echoes of what was, and start hearing the faint hum of what is. You realize that the present doesn't ask for your perfection. It asks for your presence. And in that presence, healing begins to happen naturally. Like light returning to a room that's been dark for too long. Perhaps the most beautiful part of letting go is discovering how much lighter your heart feels afterward. You start walking differently, slower, softer, freer. You stop waiting for closure from others, because you've learned to give it to yourself. You stop chasing what doesn't align, because you've realized peace is far more valuable than validation. Letting go doesn't mean you'll never care again. It means you'll care more wisely. You'll love people without needing to possess them. You'll dream without needing to control outcomes. You'll live with open hands, ready to hold what life gives, and release what it takes away. Because deep down, you know that everything that's meant for you has its own way of finding you again. And when it does, you'll be ready. Lighter, clearer, and fully alive in the moment that meets you. So breathe deeply. Loosen your grip. Trust that nothing real can ever truly be lost. Only transformed. Let go. And watch how the universe quietly rushes in to fill the space you've made for something new. At the end of every journey, there comes a still point. A quiet place where all the noise that once surrounded you, all the striving, the longing, the ache of being seen, finally settles into silence. And in that silence, you find something that was never truly gone. Yourself. Not the self the world demanded. Not the self shaped by expectation, by comparison or fear. But the self that existed before you ever tried to prove your worth. The self that simply is. You begin to see that solitude was never your enemy. It was the doorway, the long-forgotten passage leading back to your own center. Every moment of loneliness, every unanswered call, every quiet night spent in reflection, it was guiding you home. Home to the truth that you are not broken. Home to the realization that you were never really missing anything at all. For so long, you looked outward for meaning. You sought connection, validation, belonging. But the deeper you searched, the more you discovered that what you were truly longing for was not out there. It was the voice within, asking to be remembered. The voice that whispers, "You are already enough. You always have been." When you finally return to yourself, life begins to move differently. You start seeing beauty in the small, quiet things. The morning light through the window. The taste of tea. The rhythm of your own breathing. You stop searching for extraordinary moments. Because you've realized that presence makes everything extraordinary. The return to the self is not dramatic or loud. It doesn't come with applause or a revelation that changes everything overnight. It comes softly, like dawn touching the horizon after a long night. It comes when you no longer need to be someone else to feel whole. When you no longer chase what leaves you empty. When you no longer confuse noise for connection. And in that moment, something profound happens. You realize that you can be alone without being lonely. Because you are not truly alone anymore. You are with yourself. the you that listens without judgment, the you that forgives your past selves for not knowing better, the you that can sit in stillness without needing distraction. That you is your anchor, quiet, calm, unwavering. To return to the self is to return to truth. And truth is not found in perfection, it's found in honesty. It's admitting when you are tired. It's allowing yourself to rest. It's forgiving yourself for trying too hard to be understood. It's realizing that growth doesn't always look like progress. Sometimes it looks like peace. The greatest freedom you will ever know is this: to belong to yourself. To walk through life knowing that you do not need constant reassurance to feel worthy. That you can love others deeply without losing yourself in them. That you can stand alone and still feel connected to everything. When you return to yourself, you stop living from fear and start living from presence. You stop asking, "What if they don't stay?" and start asking, "What if I never leave myself again?" This is what solitude has been teaching you all along. Not how to isolate, but how to integrate. How to hold both light and shadow. How to breathe into the spaces you once tried to fill. How to listen to your own soul and finally trust its guidance. And when you finally do, the loneliness fades not because the world has changed, but because you have. You have learned to make peace with the unknown. You have learned to stand still in uncertainty without losing your center. You have learned that love is not something you find, it's something you are. So now, when you walk back into the world, into relationships, into work, into the endless movement of days, you'll carry this stillness with you. You'll move differently. You'll love differently. You'll exist not from emptiness seeking to be filled, but from fullness quietly overflowing. That is what it means to be whole. Not perfect. Not untouchable. But whole, aware of your light, aware of your darkness, and unafraid of either. And as this chapter closes, remember, solitude was never meant to confine you. It was meant to refine you. It was never about learning to live without others. It was about learning to live with yourself. Because once you return to that place within, the one untouched by time, rejection, or loss, you'll realize that you were never truly lost to begin with. You were only finding your way home. So take a deep breath. Feel the weight lift. And whisper softly, "I am here. I am whole. I am enough." Then step into your next moment. Not as someone searching, but as someone who has finally returned. The soul does not grow louder, it grows quieter. In silence, it remembers its shape. In solitude, it learns its strength. And in stillness, it returns home. Not to a place, but to itself. Deep within.